if you're not comfortable doing anything on a bike, any sort of maintenance yourself, I would go and see a trusty engineer, someone that you know, someone with a good reputation. You're going to be riding around on a bike, so the reliability is in his hands. So you've got to make sure you go to someone that you really do trust. But before you go on a long trip, I would make a real effort to sort of learn about your bike, because if you don't learn about your bike, if it goes wrong, you might not be near a mechanic. Anything that can happen. You could fall off, you could bend something, you could break something. So I think getting a real basic grasp on sort of motorcycle mechanics and engineering will go a long way and save you a whole load of hassle. I like to break the bike down into component parts. Of course, you've got the engine, you've got the chassis, you've got the fairings and fuel tank, and you've got all parts that swing and move on the chassis. So you can have the wheels, the swing arm, things like the chain. And then finally, most importantly, brakes. You've got to make sure that the brakes are okay. All the engines seem pretty good and they seem pretty tight. I'm going to check that the final drive bearing hasn't got any play in it, because that can leak oil. I'm going to change the oil in the engine and the oil filter. I'm also going to check all the tappets in the rocker box to make sure that they're not tapping and they're within spec. After I've done that, I would have removed all the tank and the fairings. I'll inspect the frames. And once I've inspected the frames and I made sure they're okay and they're not rusty and they haven't got any weak points, I'll then move on to the moving parts that are on the chassis. And that includes swing arm, all the suspension linkages, the monoshock mounts, and of course wheel bearings as well. Once we've done the wheel bearings, I'll then take the forks off the front of the bike, and which are these things here. These are the forks. They go up into these triple clamps. And the triple clamps are basically steer within the chassis, so they have bearings in as well, and so I'm going to change the head race bearings. So we do all the wheel bearings, all the swing arm bearings, all the suspension bearings, the head race bearings, and then once I've done all of that, I'll then move on to the brakes. Oh dear, I think my first mechanical experience was when I was about maybe 8 or 9 years old, and as a present for me, my dad bought me a moped. But what he didn't tell me was the moped was in bits, so he took me to the garage and there's just this old blue frame and 2 boxes of bits, and I was really excited thinking I was going to have a motorbike, but I think that was my training really. He said you can have this motorbike if you put it back together, so I laid all the bits out, worked out what connected to what. I didn't have any drawings or Haynes manuals like we have nowadays, and with my dad's help we rebuilt it.